Well, folks, we've got a treat for you today. In what has become sort of an annual tradition here on Tackle Talk, we are joined by everybody's favorite aquatic biologist, Mr. Shan Ogorman. And today, Shan's got the answers to all of our questions about anything and everything ponds. That means depth, clarity, cover, forage, management, weeds, you name it, we cover it, all that and more on today's episode of Tackle Talk.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Dance, and you're listening to Tackle Talk.
This is the Tackle Talk podcast, brought to you by American Legacy Fishing and Outdoors. World-class fishing gear, unmatched personal service. Now, here's your host, Andrew Hayes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Tackle Talk podcast. We've got a treat for you guys today, but first, we are brought to you by American Legacy Fishing and Outdoors. And the folks at ALF are coming fresh off of their awesome Father's Day sale, where they've offered a surprise 50% off some great inventory from Berkley, Spro, Shimano, Dobbins, St. Croix, Fenwick, and more just for Father's Day. And if you're sitting in your car or at work right now and you're going, darn it, why didn't I know about that sale? Well, shame on you. You should have signed up for American Legacy Fishing's email alerts. Unless you hate fishing or you hate saving money or some combination of the two, there's no reason not to be signed up for email alerts through American Legacy Fishing so that you can be notified of these surprise sales that they run all the time. Tack that onto an already giant list of the reasons why I choose to shop at American Legacy Fishing. Great people, check. Great prices, check. Family owned, check. Midwest roots and amazing customer service, check. A blanket 10% back and free shipping for being an elite member, check. And an extra 5% off with our sales stackable coupon code TACKLETALK5. All of that together makes it an easy choice for where I'm going to shop for my fishing gear. So go check them out over at www.americanlegacyfishing.com and be sure to use code TACKLETALK5 at checkout for an extra 5% off all regularly priced and sale items. Again, that is code TACKLETALK5 over at www.americanlegacyfishing.com. Okay, folks, this is going to be maybe one of the shortest intros to a guest episode that I've ever done. One, because you already know him, you love him, he's the most popular guest in Tackle Talk history, making his 6th appearance on the program today. The one and only Mr. Shan Ogorman is with us this episode. But two, because I think we actually hit it pretty well right at the beginning of our actual conversation about just how much we appreciate Shan and what he's meant to Tackle Talk over the years. And at the risk, I guess, of repeating myself and spoiling the first part of our conversation, I'm just going to let our chat sort of speak for itself. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mr. Shan Ogorman. All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we are joined by the leader in all-time Tackle Talk appearances. By my count, I believe this is the 6th full episode that you've been on over the years. It is everyone's favorite aquatic biologist, Mr. Shan Ogorman. Shan, buddy, how's it going?
Very well. Thanks for having me back on again.
Well, you know what's crazy? I was thinking about this the other day, and I actually looked at the dates. So the first time that we ever talked and you ever hopped on an episode of Tackle Talk was June 15th, 2020, which means by the time this comes out on Tuesday, we will have passed the 5-year anniversary of the first time that you've been on this show. That's crazy to me to think about. Like, on one hand, yes, obviously, you know, it feels like maybe we didn't meet that long ago. On the other hand, it feels like I've known you for like 20 years. So isn't that crazy to think about? It's been 5 years since the first episode.
I was wondering when that was, actually, and it's been 5 years exactly now. That's really amazing. What are some of the numbers there? Like, we doing good? We touching 1 million people? Like, how many people have we?
You know what's wild is your episodes, and I should probably say a big thank you to you on this one. Like, the first time that we had you on, that was definitely a giant episode in terms of probably the trajectory of where this show went after that, because that was the first time that I'd ever really talked to anybody that had any sort of biological background. It's all just, you know, you grow up and you listen to what the pro tells you to throw or what the, you know, Bass Pro commercial tells you to throw. And that was like God's truth, I guess, at that point, is you just took all of that for its word. And then I wish I knew the name of the gentleman. I got a random Instagram message one day, and he basically just said, dude, you got to check this guy out. And I was like, okay. So I clicked on thing, and I just fell down this probably hour rabbit hole of scrolling through and reading, because you you'll post a photo, but then you have, 5 paragraphs under it breaking something down. And I mean, doom scrolled for an hour just reading all these things. Like, this is awesome. So we brought you on, and, if we didn't have that episode, there is no the bait breakdown series that we did. There's no, probably 10 or 15 other episodes we've done since then with more of like a biology slant to them, or the DNR or the fisheries managers or people like that. So I'd probably owe you a giant thank you, because otherwise I would just be doing what everybody else does. Back then, it's crazy to think about. People weren't having biologists on. Now it seems like the norm. Everybody has fisheries biologists on all the time, and they take that slant. That was definitely out of left field for the time.
It was. I remember you calling and asking me about it, and us discussing that and not really understanding why that angle hadn't been played before. But it certainly seemed to work very well for you, and you've done a very good job. I'm very proud of your development in that. And I think that, past myself, just there's a vast amount of information out there you can learn from other biologists that is untouched. And for anybody like Andrew out there trying to do that, I think you have local resources that are untapped with your local scientists.
Yeah, you're the reason that I spend like my lunch breaks some days just reading like research papers. Like I do that now. I go online and you search the keywords on all those like educational or scholarly websites, and you're just looking through. And I don't know if you ever do that. Do you ever go through and try and read those? Because also the weird part is probably 2/3 of the research that's being done, like true research studies that are being done, are like Japan or China, or it's languages I can't understand. So then you're looking through those, and you'll see a really interesting topic, and you'll try to click on the paper, and it's like, I have no idea what's going on here. And so then you got to look for like one that's in English. But yeah, you are the reason that I have that itch that I have to scratch all the time, because it seems so silly that we just grew up and we followed commercials and magazines and everything, and we're chasing living creatures that have a biology to them. They have brains, they have tendencies and habits, and it seems silly not to study that type of thing. So we definitely appreciate you hopping on again. I've got just a litany of questions for you, because I'm embarrassed. It's been way too long since you've been on this show. So I have a giant smattering of questions, some of which have been written into us like in the mailbag, and I just realize I'm not the person that should be answering, that it should be someone like you. So I want to start out in like your kind of area of expertise, which is ponds. So, pond management and, kind of small to mid-water fisheries managing, and just making sure that that ecosystem is set up right. I've got a ton of questions here on the pond side of things. The first is one that actually came to us probably about 6-7 weeks ago, but I wrote this one down to kind of start us out. Ponds, when you're looking for a pond to fish, one of the things that I think is a big differentiator around here is depth. So what role does depth play in how healthy a pond can be, how productive a pond can be for bass? Is it more about just, acreage in terms of how far does it spread, or does depth really matter?
That's a good one. Okay, so there'd be a wide variable there, like for a super deep pond or a super shallow pond, right? Both of those would pose dangers to your pond. You wouldn't want a pond all less than 3 feet deep.
Okay.
It wouldn't have cooling properties as well. Your fish would be really stressed because of heat and because of cold. So knowing that, we know, okay, we need some depth. But on the flip side of that, if you have a 1 acre pond that's 1,000 feet deep, that's not benefiting you either because of light penetration, right?
Okay.
The light can only penetrate so deep. So the plankton could only grow so deep.
So you just have a bunch of dead water.
Right. Yeah. And if you have too much dead water down there, like say we use 1,000 feet. So we in a 1 acre pond, we would literally probably have like 6 feet of oxygen, and then 990 feet of no oxygen under the thermocline. So if anything ever kind of turned over, any kind of oxygen problem, you have such a volume of oxygen with no volume of water with no oxygen, that if you had any kind of turnover, it would just kill your lake, because the volume with oxygen is so much less than the volume without. be very dangerous, right? So that would be a situation where your pond, a small pond, could be too deep and cause turnover problems, right? But outside those two radical extremes, right, you just have a regular pond built. Depth is relatively unimportant because of the light penetration and the plankton. Where people get confused a lot is like their big reservoirs or like up there where you're at the Great Lakes. They go to the Great Lakes, catch fish 100 feet deep, right? Bigger reservoirs, 40 feet, 30 feet. Ponds, even if you dug it 40 feet, won't hold oxygen at 40 feet a long part of the year because of the light penetration. So you're limited there. And I've seen guys in construction mode overspend digging a pond out too deep for its size. It's like you're not going to have any oxygen down there in the summertime. And in the South, that makes a big difference.
Yeah, you're wasting your time, you're wasting your money. You think it's going to be great, and it's like, oh, this is going to be a feature to my pond that the 3 ponds down the street don't have. It's like, there's a reason they don't have it. It doesn't matter.
No, what you're going to have is all the mass suspended on the thermocline out there about 13, 14 feet deep.
Yeah.
You've got 40, you spent $2 million digging another 40 feet of depth out, and all your fish are suspended on the tops of those trees right there. I already know where they're going to be. You don't have to fill the lake up.
Do you have to have a pond a certain depth, like the farther north you go because of winters? Like, can a pond be too shallow? Obviously, if it's a couple feet deep, maybe even. But if you have a 2 or 3 foot deep pond, will those fish survive through like freezes and stuff? Is there like a magic number or something that you need to say, hey, this will sustain fish all year long? I know you don't deal with that down there in Florida, but up here
exactly.
we do. Yeah.
I mean, I'm in Florida now, and I grew up in Georgia. But I know from my studies and everything, a same exact rule applies. If you're going to get 16 inches of ice, you're going to need a certain amount of water under it. But the plankton still makes the oxygen under the ice.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Which makes sense. I guess it does have to. Yeah.
That's why it's important. If you guys up there hear about keeping the ice clear, right?
Yeah.
You don't want a big snowpack on your ice. That's putting that now the light can't penetrate. Now you won't have oxygen.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So that's why it's important to keep the snowpack off so the light will penetrate.
Huh. What's the threshold that like plankton can operate at? Like how much do they need? Do they need very little light to do their thing?
Yeah,
okay.
Barely any.
So as long as it's not pitch black down there,
right,
you're okay. But you have to let some sort of light in. You can't have 3 foot of snow packed on your pond.
No, it'll kill it.
Okay.
Winter kills. Yeah. I know that.
That's where a lot of, when you hear about like a fish kill in the wintertime,
yeah,
it's because of light penetration. I always just assumed it's like, oh, the ice got too thick and it froze everything.
No,
and killed
pay
everything.
attention. It's the really snowy years that happens.
Interesting. Good to know for sure. Or around here, our fish kills are just because of pesticides and farm runoff too. But
you can have that
you have
too.
That. Yeah.
You definitely have all kinds of those types of issues, as well. But on the flip side of that, though, we have to, like in Georgia, especially, like people will shy away. Like, I would never eat fish out of the pond. I was like, really? Because I would eat fish out of that pond before I ate fish from the grocery store.
Yeah.
And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, really.
You don't want to know how many chemicals are in that grocery store fish.
I don't even know where it's from.
Yeah. It's not the species it says it is.
Yeah, right? Who knows?
What about pond color in general? Like, are there certain pond colors to look for or stay away from? Our, super clear ponds relatively healthier? Or dirty ponds? I feel like sometimes I shy toward dirty stuff because I feel like it gives me an advantage as an angler versus, I can sneak up a little better. Those fish aren't as spooky. There's a little bit of that to it. But health-wise for a pond, does it matter?
Okay, so again, we're on a scale, right? It's not like all bad, or it's not like a light switch on off. There's a relative scale of good and bad. So from a productivity standpoint, if we're just standing looking at a pond, when I see green water, right, just that maybe 18, 20 inches of visibility, pea soup, emerald kind of green colored water, okay, that's the plankton. You're looking at billions and billions and billions of plankton floating in the water. And so that to me tells me that the pounds of fish per acre are going to be higher. So if I'm looking at a pond with a visibility of 18 inches, I know I'm looking at a pond that probably holds about 400 pounds of fish per acre. Whereas if I'm in Georgia and I'm looking at this, it's a 10-acre pond and up there, and it's green, and it's down here, and it's clear. Now I'm probably looking at 100 pounds of fish per acre. Okay, so 25% the fish population. Okay, but that doesn't mean the fish won't be big, because the productivity doesn't have anything to do with the size of the fish. It has to do with how many are there. So what I'm meaning is, you could have a stunted bass population with 400 pounds of fish per acre, and you've just got a bunch of 1-pound bass. I could have a balanced fish population with the 100 pounds, with a much lower productivity, but a balanced fishery that kicks out 8, 9, 10-pound fish all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's where guys really get confused with that. Just because I have a higher productivity doesn't mean I have bigger fish. Because when I go in and I tell them, hey man, you got too many bass, we got to get them out of here, the first thing they want to do is kick the productivity up.
Yeah.
The only thing you're doing is pouring gas on a fire. Now you've got 4 times as many 1-pound bass to deal with. You adjust the 1-pound bass population, then you kick your productivity up.
Got it.
That's how you correct a problem.
That's an interesting way to think about it. I think that's a misconception, obviously, we have as anglers too, and just the color in general. Like, we look at a pond, we go, oh, that pond's gross, I'm not going to fish that pond. Like, no, that pond is basically a bass protein shake. That it's full of food. It's not dirty. It's a good thing to look for.
Right, sure. And the kind of the density, or like the color of that water, that murky kind of green brown color that you were describing, you're describing gizzard shad influence to me.
Okay.
Right?
They're definitely in a lot of these. Yeah.
Right? So, but again, when I start seeing that certain color, I know there's gizzard shad. I know there's trophy bass forage. I know there's something for bass to climb up on. So yeah, the color of the water can tip me off.
How does a gizzard shad change the color of the water?
They have a gizzard like a chicken, right?
Okay.
And they filter, scrape everything. They can scrape. They can filter feed the water like any shad, right? And onto gill rakers, and that goes into the gizzard. But they can also scrape, like almost like a crawfish feeds.
Okay.
Scrapers, right? So all that
so it kicks that up then.
Material and all that stuff on the rocks, a little algae and zooplankton mixture, detritus and all that gets all kicked through their gill rakers. It creates that. And since there's so many, it's
constant. It's like that all the time.
They're just constantly doing it. But then when you think about that, right? Think about what they're doing. Scraping, filtering on the plants, on the rocks, in everything. Well, 50% of a bluegill's diet is zooplankton. So what do you think's happening to the bluegill population when you introduce a gizzard shad? Right? You're like, oh, well, the bluegill don't really produce here anymore. Yeah, no kidding.
No kidding. You gave competition to them.
They got a significant amount of competition. So that goes back to kind of what we were talking about in the green room. When people start moving fish around, they're not realizing that it's a seesaw. What you add takes away someplace else.
You add something to it, you're taking away. That's a good point too. I think a lot of times when people think about stocking bass or moving bass over, there's a couple things they think about. One, it might be illegal where you're at, so that might be a reason why people do it or don't do it, which is good. That's fine. But there are other implications to it. I think a lot of people think, again, we hear this with when we had our crawfish guy on before. He's like, don't move craws because they have different diseases and different things they can bring over, and that's another reason. But the third reason that you shouldn't move bass is what you're talking about, is that it has detrimental effects. Just because you release 5-10 pound bass into your pond, you think, oh, I just jump started this trophy fishery right here. Actually, you just ruined your pond.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I know this because a lot of my clients were homeowners associations in the metro Atlanta, Charlotte, kind of areas in Southeastern like that. And a lot of those communities, properties like that, don't really pay you to manage fisheries. You're not getting paid electrofishing jobs every season. You're not doing anything like that. So if I saw a fishery that had a problem, I kind of felt like it was my responsibility to take care of that problem, right? Even though maybe I could have made the decision, to not work for free too, I guess. But I decided to be in fisheries, being fish. I decided to tackle those problems. So I wasn't ever really compensated for them But I did a lot of those problems were somehow, some way, a bass population was getting destroyed, and I had to reintroduce larger fish into it. So, and I have quite a bit of experience doing it, and it doesn't work the way anybody thinks it works. About half the time, the bass that you put in there lose weight, no matter how much forage is in the lake that you put them into.
Just stress
Not
of a
sure
new
why.
environment.
Yeah, but I mean, I literally have done it, and then it's like a 35-acre lake I did it to, and managed it for 15 years after that. So I ran electrofishing survey on it as well. So I have a lot of experience on that one particular place, trying to reestablish a bass population in 35 acres of water. And it didn't take nearly as many bass as I thought it would. It took 5 bass per acre. And if I would have done it the way I thought, I did it the way I did it carefully, and didn't make assumptions. I was about to dump a bunch of bass in there and just let it rip, but I didn't. And I'm really glad that I didn't, because the way I was going to do it, like making assumptions, would have been way wrong. And I swung that place back around to a really nice fishery. It kicked out 9 and 8.5 and 9s and stuff. It really came on, did for what it was pretty good. But the moral of that story is not the success of the fishery for people to take away. It was how many fish that I pulled up in electrofish, because I tagged them. I knew the fish that I put in. There was plenty of forage, there's plenty of shad, plenty of crappie, it was ruined, it was wrecked. And the bass needed to be in there, and they did not recover well, most of them. I think it has to do with, you don't know how stunted the fish that you're pulling, those 1 pound fish, you don't know how old they are.
You just know how big they are.
A 9-year-old 1 pound
Yeah.
fish. And no wonder why. It's 800 years old. No wonder why it's like growing.
Right. Need some young blood in there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think that's what it is, because you generally don't see that when you buy those larger advanced, like 9-inch fish from a hatchery. Those tend to grow a little bit better than the ones you transport from other places.
Yeah, it's a good point. Just because a fish is small doesn't mean it's young.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. And especially a bass, especially in our country right now, the way they've managed. Yeah.
So where do we stand on pond dyes then? Because I see people on both sides of that argument all the time too. Like, I guess,
Oh yeah.
I know it's an aesthetic thing. I know people want their pond to look nice and they don't want it to look gross and gunky and stuff. So you see these guys just dump in just gallons and gallons of this blue stuff around the dock, and it changes color, in 2 or 3 days or whatever. Does that change the fishery at all? Does that affect bass, or does it affect how the zooplankton or the forage base or whatever operates in there? Or is it just purely on like a cosmetic level?
No, it makes a significant difference. It depends on the goals of the pond. Are we managing a pond with a wheel in front of an apartment complex that's got no fish in it? You know what I mean? It's just this ornamental thing.
Yeah. It's like a putt-putt course. Yeah. It's just like a decoration. Yeah.
Exactly. It's the water ride at Six Flags, put dye in it. I don't care. Okay. But when you cross over into, you want to grow fish, right? Now we were trying to maintain a healthy fish population. Okay. Well, I'm not saying you can't maintain a healthy fish population with dye, but you are covering the pond with shade. You are shading the water. You're shading the plankton. No different than the shade of the snow plow that we just described, the snowpack we just described. No different than any other shade. So when you shade the plankton, you decrease the zooplankton, you decrease the aquatic insects, you decrease the whole thing. You lower the productivity of the pond.
So it doesn't ruin a pond, it stunts a pond a little bit. It kind of kneecaps it or handicaps it to the productivity it can produce.
Right.
Okay.
And again, you're probably not going to see it in the form of, oh, wow, there's really not too many fish in the pond. You're probably not going to even see it at all, because people don't look and go, oh, wow, an 85% relative weight largemouth bass. Oh, wow, a 98% relative weight largemouth bass. I can see that significant difference. But if you don't measure like me, you'll never see it. You'll just look, oh, it looks good, and throw it back. Never see it.
Because you don't know what it could have been or what it should be. Yeah.
Exactly. Or what it was, because I've actually seen what you described. I can name drop all over that. Kenny Rogers used to own a place outside of Athens.
Kenny Rogers, name drop. Yeah, there we go.
The gambler. And he hired Dr. Gilbert, who taught me all this stuff at Georgia. And Dr. Gilbert had like a side gig managing ponds for guys like that. And we were there. I mean, he had a private golf course that his water hazards were his ponds that were managed. And yeah, it went from that. And then he sold the place, and the guy who bought it got rid of that whole plan and added dye. So we went from fertilized, highly managed by a PhD level fisheries professor to completely not managed, switched it 180 degrees the opposite direction and put dye in it. Dude, those were the worst bass. I were like Auschwitz bass.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Just ruined a good thing. Yeah.
Just
because they wanted it to look a little better.
Well, they just went the other direction with it. Like you went from extremely high you went from a turbocharged Dodge Viper fish productivity, right? And then you just took it the other way to a lawnmower. Like you just changed it completely.
So how long does that stuff last? Like if someone does dye a pond and you're like, oh crap, I probably shouldn't have done this. Is it semi-permanent? Does it take a while for it to kind of fade out of that pond as long as you don't keep adding it to it?
Well, now you're talking hydrology.
Yeah. I guess it depends on
flow. Yeah. How much flow is coming through the water you put it in.
For normally, like a normal pond, I mean, will that stuff last a month, a year, 10 years? Yeah.
Month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not like, now the damage will probably be done for whatever you did for it for a month or whatever, but if you let it go and you quit dyeing it, is there a chance that you can kind of resurrect that fishery?
I mean, I could say, okay, so let's say I've got like a pond that I'm managing online right now, a 2.5 acre pond, but I'm using feeders to stimulate the bluegill population. I can dye that water.
Yeah, because you're controlling everything.
I'm maintaining them on feed anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not relying on that end of the food chain to really feed my bluegill and maintain my high level of fish productivity. So I can still maintain with dye, right?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right.
Because you're controlling things that would not naturally be controlled in a pond.
I'm adding energy in a different way.
Yeah. What about grass? Where do you stand on like how much grass should be in a pond? Should you kill grass? Is there too much grass? What's that look like?
So generally, like right here is where all of the information about fishing, usually around like hydrilla or pads or anything like that people watch on TV, automatically gets associated as good and automatically gets associated as something beneficial for a pond. And again, we're not in a major lake or reservoir anymore. We're in usually a pond is a man-made structure. There are natural ponds too, but usually you're in a man-made structure and it's usually pretty shallow. So the general rule of thumb for ponds is to keep the weeds out because they can choke them so fast. They're really hard to manage. They can grow really, really fast. So as a general rule of thumb, just book knowledge wise, you don't want any weeds in a pond. And again, going back to my HOA, back to the golf course people, back to all those people like that, they generally want their ponds maintained like that. They want to look out there. They want it manicured to the edge. They don't want to see a wrapper. They don't want to see a bottle. They don't want to see nothing in it, and they want it looking good, right?
Well, don't come to Dayton, Ohio, then.
Right. Well,
never seen one of those ponds before. Oh, but yeah. So then, like you said, okay, in a perfect world, there's not much grass or much vegetation at all. So then, what do you do?
So I was forced then to manage a fishery with no weeds, they would make me go take the trees out. We don't like that tree in there. Get that blowdown out. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to charge the crap out of you for that.
Yeah, but also that drops insects in here, that's shade. Like, it's a good thing.
Let's just take everything good about the fishery and remove it. You know what I mean? And
let's make it a glorified giant kiddie pool.
Right. And I just thought, oh my God, what is going to happen here? And again, what I assumed and what happened in the field were two different things. It really, removing all that habitat really didn't change the fishery at all. I was able to grow great fish.
Okay, as long as you keep everything else the way it should.
Bowl. Yeah. Like literally no structure. Like I took it all out. I sprayed the algae. I sprayed the plants. They make me, if it's my lake, I'm like, I'll let that ride, But then you got Karen HOA,
Yeah.
that ain't happening. So you're treating every 30 days. And I'm just like, okay, well, let's just see what happens to the fish population. Well, guess what? All that stuff, I can still manage for great, healthy fish without it because the balance is so much more important. Now, could I put a boost on it? Probably, absolutely. Yeah. Whipped cream on the cake? Sure, with some better habitat. But I still grew great bass in cereal bowls.
So, but then to me as an angler, I'm just like, well, then I liked that tree because now it made bass more predictable on how they use that tree and that shade line and all that type of stuff. Or you took out the, lay downs that were in the middle of the lake because they were unsightly. Well, then, okay, but those hold fish all the time. So now these fish are just roaming around this featureless body of water, basically. No rhyme or reason to it. Chasing bait, I guess.
Actually, you bring up a great point, and we might even talk about it on one of the other half a dozen podcasts I've been on, but that was the place that I did the electrofishing survey with the little yellow shovel, and it was floating in the lake. The little kid's shovel that they play with at the beach.
Okay.
I think we've had this story before, but I'll tell it again. So I was electrofishing down the bank, and I'd removed all of it out of there, and I was like, well, let's just go see how this electrofishing survey looks. And the fish looked great and healthy, and I was like, oh my God. And I saw the shovel, and I was like, let's just treat it like a piece of structure. And I let off the pedal, and I eased up, and I turned the boat back on, and like pretty much every bass in the lake was sitting on that little yellow shovel. I got
because it's the only thing there.
Bass out from underneath that floating.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
interesting.
So I think we can derive from that if you're fishing in a cereal bowl, pay attention to the subtle structure changes.
Yeah, throw a shovel in there and come back a day later.
There you go.
So if you do have weeds in your body of water, or you're trying to kill them or get them out, what's the preferred way to do that? I hear people all the time, like I'm going to get this wrong, but it's like the copper sulfate or whatever that they're sprinkling around or doing whatever, introducing grass carp in there or something. Like, what's the preferred way to get rid of vegetation if you have too much in there?
Hire a professional person like me.
Okay. What will you do?
You're not going to listen to that. You're not going to listen to that. So contact me in my DMs and I will walk you through it. That's why I started doing all this. Actually, I thought this would be a really good public service. And I really actually have had a few people who I have helped with, but no, they kind of fly by the seat of their pants and listen to whoever. And if you don't know anything about treating water, just hire a guy, if you have a pond, though, and you can't hire a guy, and I understand that, it is doable. The products are legal to buy. You can buy them on Amazon. I have a page there. You can look them up there or anywhere. Any farm supply store, Tractor Supply.
Okay.
Get pond chemicals there, algicides and herbicides. Educate yourself on the differences and try to get some ideas. And I think probably the easiest, understand algae and herbicide don't work. Algicides don't work on plants, and herbicides don't work on algae. That's the biggest mistake I see guys make. Like you just mentioned copper sulfate.
Yeah.
Throw some copper sulfate on it. Well, that's great, but you're not treating an algae. You're misidentifying the plant. You're putting copper sulfate in the water on something that doesn't die to copper sulfate treatment.
Yeah, wasting your money.
And you're putting stuff in the water that shouldn't be in the water. So I see a lot, because it is available to the public, I see a lot of misuse of pond products like that. And that's a big part of what drives me to help people, because if you do it right, you can really minimize the amount of stuff you're putting in the water and do a better job, keep it clean, keep it out of your pocket. So you don't want, anytime in ponds, you want to be proactive and kind of get on it. Don't play let's just wait and see what happens. It's going to blow up on you. Especially a weed problem in a pond. It's going to blow up on you.
So I will notice the one thing you didn't recommend to do is go out and buy 12 grass carp and throw them in there.
Well, they're not legal everywhere.
Okay. Is that an actual solution to it?
Yeah, I use grass carp in every pond I ever managed in Georgia.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Is there a certain number where you don't want too many or too few? I know you've got the biomass of this whole thing that you have to balance, so you don't want, too many. And I'm assuming if you only have one or so and it's not able to cover the whole thing, then that's not doing any good either. Is there like a number per acre or something you typically look for?
Oh yeah. And I can break that down to you real good. And so here's what happens with all that and why the grass carp get a bad name, because they are a light switch. They are on or off, right? So you've either stocked enough grass carp to control your problems or you haven't, right? Grass carp tend to eat stuff that grows off the bottom, soft plants like hydrilla. That's a perfect example because most guys get most pissed about the control of hydrilla.
Yep.
So what happens in a hydrilla lake? Well, the hydrilla chokes out so much of the lake that, like, if it was in this lake or like Orange Lake down the road, you've got a 10,000 acre lake, but you've only got 1,000 acres of fishable water due to hydrilla choking everything out, right? So the bass tend to get stacked and crowded into places that they can hunt because the plant is choking out. They can't hunt in the dense mats. They got to hunt the edges of the mats. So when bass stack up on the edges of the mats, they get real easy to catch.
Right.
It gives the appearance that when you get rid of the hydrilla, you ruin the fishing, but you haven't.
They're just more spread out. Yeah.
They're just more spread out. So if you don't put more than about 10 grass carp per acre in there, they're not going to control anything, really. You're not going to really notice. You're going to kind of feel like you wasted your money because your weed problems are still there and you spent a bunch of money on these grass carp.
Okay.
At about 10 per acre, you're going to start getting your pond weeds are going to be controlled. Your hydrillas will be controlled. The more preferential soft plants that grow up off the bottom. Think about like what you would want to eat personally in a salad. If it's hard and cattails, they're not eating that. They're not going up out of the water for stuff, right? Now, as the more over 10 per acre I add, the faster they'll clean your problem up, the slower they'll grow. So that means the longer they'll kind of grow. Because once they get out in their metabolism, they get a little older, 7, 8 years old, they don't eat as much. And you'll have grass carp, big ones, but you'll start getting weeds again because they're old and they're not eating as much. So you'll got about a 7-year period there of not having to treat for 7 years a significant portion of the problems that you can get introduced into a pond, like pond weeds and things like that. And when you look at it that way, especially versus the cost of what things cost now, 7 years of weed control is a vast savings when you compare it to chemical, right? And you're not using any chemicals; you're using zero chemicals in the environment.
Yeah,
so I understand why grass carp get a bad rap, but again, it's 50% wrong, and 50% wrong is 100. What did I say earlier? 50% right is 100% wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And so you're kind of, that's what all fishing has, is like, it's touching on right, but it's still not.
So the one thing we probably should say for anybody that's not super familiar with things is like, there is a giant difference between putting grass carp in your pond and putting carp in your pond. Do not put carp in your pond. Do not, you want to talk about ruining a pond in 2.5 seconds. Do not put regular common carp in your pond.
I think we should go back and just touch on the beginning of this whole thing. Don't transport any fish anywhere, anytime, ever.
Also a good point.
Okay. Let's just go back and revisit that. Don't stock fish ever, ever, ever. You call a guy like me. So that being said, you don't want a grass carp is a completely different than a common carp.
Well, and now the problem is you've got, like, especially young, impressionable people, they're watching YouTube. They see some, super oversaturated thumbnail that says, I stocked my 50-acre pond, and it's some dude with, like, 12 coolers of bass fry just dumping them into this pond. And you're like, who did you talk to anybody? No. Or were you just trying to make a YouTube video and be like, oh yeah, this will get some clicks. This will be great. Look how much money I spent on. Yeah, exactly. And that's every one of those views is someone that needs to hear this to cancel it out.
Yeah. It hurts my feelings sometimes, man. It really does. But no, you're exactly right on that. And again, misinformation being copied over and over and over again. So many guys, it's a herd mentality thing. So many guys have done it wrong that when somebody like me comes on and says, "Hey, that's not," well, they've got so many people on their side that I don't matter. Yeah, that's the problem with stuff like that.
And just remind yourself, think of those videos that you watched of the people stocking the ponds. How many people make the video 4 years later and be like, look, I'm catching 8-pounders out of this pond? None of them. Their ponds suck. Their ponds are all terrible. There's a common theme there if you go back and watch.
Let's put some numbers to it and then break down exactly. I saw one actually I'm going to pick on. I'm not going to call it by name, but I'll pick on it by what they did. It's exactly what you said. I stocked... I think it was 50,000 bluegill in my pond. Okay. And it had like 1 million views, literally a legit mill, an M. And I'm going, okay. So he's all excited and he's got his fish in his bags, and he sets them at the end of the water and he puts them out in there. All right. But let's think about this for a second. And let's think about it from the food chain and what we know, what we've talked about here, right? We understand just from today's talk, putting a bass into a pond is a significant predator. Right? You can eat. And we know from past tackle talks, it takes 10 pounds of forage for one bass to grow 1 pound. Right? So we can use that in reverse. What if instead of stocking 50,000 bluegill in his pond, he just kept one 1 pound bass? Because one 1 pound bass, how many 3-inch bluegill can one 1 pound bass eat in a month? A 3-inch bluegill, like take 3 of your fingers and stack them up. That's about a 3-incher, right? How many? Because each one of those can lay 10,000 eggs.
Yeah.
So if just 10 of them live, because you harvested that bass and you get 10 fish that lay 10,000 eggs, okay, why are you bothering to pay the fish hatchery for 50,000 fish?
For the YouTube video.
Well, again, productivity-wise, I just doubled it by keeping one fish. By keeping one fish, I just doubled everything you did because you don't understand the food chain. And you're getting ripped off and I'm not.
It's a wild, wild world. The other part of this is like, that's what sells. And so it's the sensationalism of everything we do nowadays. That's like, if you made a video that said, this is the rational way to, stock a pond, nothing. No, we just talked about this before we started, right? You had a post today about moving fish and stuff, and it's a very long and true way to look at this stuff. No one wants to see that. No one wants to listen to that. They want the, again, oversaturated, I stocked 18 million fish in this 1 acre pond. Look at this, red arrows all over the place, in the picture. It's like, that's what they want. It's crazy. And if you want better fisheries, if you want to be a better fisherman, if you want to understand these animals that we spend hours and days and weeks and months trying to catch, this is the stuff you need to be listening to.
I agree.
I also looked up who you were talking to. That's exactly who I was talking about. I looked up the video. That was the first one that came to mind.
Well, who's
what
laughing,
is going
dude?
on?
How much money did he make?
I know. I don't want to think about it. Okay, hold on a second. Let's do some math here. This will be fun.
I think that's like 30 G's, man.
So here's one that says 3,500 bass, I believe. I'm guessing this is. I don't know. I should probably check on what species this is. Okay, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's say it's bluegill. So how much does 3,500 bluegill cost?
It depends on the size you buy them.
Okay.
But if they're 4 to 6 inches, they're probably going to be about $1.50 a fish. So $5,000. If they're small, they're probably going to be like 30 cents.
Okay, so by my rough estimates, I'm guessing this person made about $22,000 on this video.
Mm-hmm.
That makes you want to throw up.
Mm-hmm. Well, he did
So
have to. He did have to. He got clipped about 4 stacks for the fish. So,
but still, I'll take a cool $18,000 day all day long.
Right?
So, but I mean, that's where the incentive structure is, right? The incentive structure
here's
is
the good news for everybody listening here. He could take that $4,000 to the edge of the pond and lit it on fire, and probably gotten more views.
I mean, I'd have watched that too.
More,
yeah,
it would have done more for his fish.
But I mean, it's like, and I feel bad. I don't mean to call anybody out individually, but it's like that's the stuff that I know you've been on I'll call it a crusade, right? Over the past 4 or 5 years that I've known you, at least, it's like this is the other side of the conversation that I'm at least glad people are finally having. I'm glad that you've been on. I've seen you on a bunch of other podcasts. I've seen you on having this conversation with other people that I think 5, 6, 7 years ago, I couldn't have imagined those people having those conversations. So I think it's important. I think this is starting to, if you want to look at like the graph, I think this stuff is at least starting now. It's not going nuts, but I think people are finally starting to say, you know what? Yeah, I should probably pay attention to this stuff. People are information hungry nowadays. They really are. And it's tough to reach those people. I get that the algorithms or whatever don't push it out like, everything else does. But the people that listen to this show, the people that follow you, like they understand the value in hearing every side of an issue, trying to be informed. And I think that's why we probably got so many pretty darn good anglers that listen to this show and these episodes and have appreciated it, because this is the stuff that may not be as easy to find on your recommended page on YouTube, but it's the stuff that you should seek out and listen to.
I agree, man. And I have to say, man, for the Tackle Talks audience, just thanks a lot, because of all the places that I've been, the kindest folks have been right here.
They are awesome. They really are. We're spoiled a little bit with the people that listen to this. I don't know what we did to deserve these people, but they're awesome. I want to get back to pond thing here. I got another question for you. When I was growing up, and still to this day even, one of the things that I'll look for at a pond that I think maybe right or wrong, you can tell me, says, hey, this pond might be a little bit more productive or somewhere that I want to fish, is the presence of fountains. Like the presence of moving water. I don't know if that's just, there's something in my DNA. I love creeks and rivers and I love moving water. And I think that's a jump start for a lot of these ecosystems, and it helps keep fish active and oxygenated and stuff like that. Is there any truth to that in a pond? Like is either an aerator, I guess, or a fountain, or both a good thing? And does a fountain work like an aerator does? What's the feelings on that type of thing?
Okay, that's a really excellent question. And so there is a significant difference between a fountain and an aerator. Okay, a fountain is an ornamental piece of equipment that sprays water into the air. It generally has a light kit on it. It generally has a nozzle type selection pattern of selections. You can have certain types and heights and different arrays of spray. Those do not move enough water to aerate the water for any kind of significant oxygen for fish at all. Like that's not how that works. Now, when you get into actual mechanical aeration, it's going to look more like a boat prop turned straight up. It's going to roll water kind of like that, like a big white water, kind of a swirling, right? Because the white water, you have to have the surface area. The water has to contact the air for the oxygen to go in, right? So you need as much surface area contact as you can get. So aerators will tend to move like 10 times, 20 times as much water as a fountain. Okay. But even then, and even when you have like $5,000 into one, mechanically aerating water in a pond is incredibly difficult, because when aeration becomes an issue, you're dealing with like a systemic problem where like everything, like the plants and the plankton and the fish and everything is consuming that oxygen. And it's almost like a vacuum cleaner, I guess. It's like pulling all the oxygen out of the water. It just becomes like a sink, and you can't beat it mechanically. There's kind of there's a false sense of security that people get when they buy aerators for what they can actually do. Right?
Yeah.
Now, that being said, I have definitely seen some systems, especially some new ones, that are kick-ass. They have got some stuff that is killer. And when you start getting into the bubble diffusers and breaking up the thermocline and all the things that those things do really, like we could do an entire podcast about just that, right? Um, I have seen aerators ruin lakes, small ponds, but I have also seen them flip them around and turn them into something that was like I didn't expect would happen.
Huh.
One thing on those bubble diffusers, just for the fishermen, I like those. The fish, especially the threadfin shad, will hang around those bubble diffusers. Like,
Okay.
I don't know why.
Huh.
They love them though. So and bait fish in general will hang around them,
Okay.
but especially these threadies.
So is that type of thing good? Like if you have something to attract and keep bait fish in a certain area, does it like assist the bass in hunting them and speed up the ecosystem at all? Like, I mean, like the, American fish trees or whatever that people like dump in these ponds. Is that just one of those things that helps us as anglers have areas to target, or does it actually speed anything up at all or make, because I mean, if you've got a bubble diffuser and shatters sitting by this thing all the time, well, if I'm a bass, I'm just annihilating those things day and night versus having to chase them around the pond or around the lake quite so much.
Yeah, and then when you got good friends like me and you, we just set those brush piles up right next to those diffusers.
Yep, and we don't tell anybody about them. I'm out there with cinder blocks at night, just dropping them.
We're not trying to be haters, man.
Yeah.
No, and I've done that too, man. Like been in running some electrofishing surveys, and it's like, this little secondary point right here always has an 8-pounder on it. Why don't we sweeten this spot up for these fat ones over here? We do that stuff.
Last year's Christmas tree just took a dive. Yeah.
Right over there.
So if there's something in a pond, like I think we've talked about before, if you were starting from scratch, I think you've said you're not deliberately putting craws in a pond. So if you have a pond or you manage a pond or there's a pond that has craws in it or something like that, is there a way to get things like that out? That might be a stupid question, but like, is there a way to remove something like craws or something like a certain species or subspecies of forage that you don't want in there? Or is it just a drain situation most of the time?
All right. Well, that's a good one too. So let's instead of being hypothetical, let's use just a real world scenario that comes up for a lot of folks. You have a drain issue. You got an old pond and you don't want to get rid of it, but you got to drain it. You've got to fix it, right? There's got no choice. Either you're going to lose the pond or you're going to fix the drain and fill it back up. And most people look at that like really like a sad day. Like, oh, Lord, we got to drain the pond. Again, in my experience, I'm 180 degrees the other direction. I am giddy with excitement. That gives you a great opportunity to grow some really nice fish. And getting rid of the fish is the key. So when I restock, I don't want existing fish there because that's going to disrupt the balance. Remember how critical I talked about this balance was this whole 5 years we've been talking about it. Well, how do I set that up? Well, I introduced the bluegill and some red ear in it first, and I let them go about a year. I let them fill the lake up completely with all. I stocked from 1 to 6 inch size classes, and I let it go for a year, so it's full of fish. And then I put the bass in there.
But you're not putting bass in there that came from that pond originally. You're starting completely. So that's the thing, right? Like I think some people will be like, "Oh, I got some good fish in here. I put them in this other pond to hold them for a while and then dump them back in." Don't do that.
No, they got to go. You have to kill them. You do not relocate them. You don't take them someplace else. You don't put them in a creek. You don't put them in somebody else's pond. Put them in a cooler, or generally, if you have to have them treated with rotenone, you can't eat them anyway. You're just putting them in the ground. But you got to start clean. You cannot play this game, right? And everybody wants to do it. I know. I mean, everybody's mind goes there. It's just human nature. But you have to do exactly what I say. But if you do exactly what I say, it'll be world-class fishing, right? If you don't do exactly what I say, if you do throw a 9-inch bass in there and then try to put some other fish in there and then try to do this and that and the other, like again, what did I say at the beginning of this podcast? A few 9-inch bass will tear you out the frame. And if you put a few little 9-inch fish into a brand new pond, you just destroyed it. Absolutely destroyed it. You wrecked everything I just tried to achieve. And I've got to drain the whole thing over and start all over again now. Kill everything and start it all over again. I cannot have them, right? This is very precise. But once you do it right, you're off and running.
What about the different genetics of like subspecies of largemouth? So like if you're starting to stock something, we hear it all the time, and I don't really know a whole lot about this, but you hear about like the F1s or the Florida strains or the northern strains or whatever. Can you stock any of those anywhere as long as you manage it correctly? Or are some of those species like, can a Florida strain or F1 or ever only go so far north? Or could you have a northern strain largemouth pond in Georgia or Florida? I don't know how any of that works.
Yeah. So like here in Florida, you're not going to be stocking any northern strains. You're only going to get Floridas, right?
What would happen if you did? They just can't handle the water temps year round?
It's illegal. You can't even buy them here.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, no, you're not bringing those here. Again, they have a fish to protect, and I'm very impressed with the way FWC does it. Because in Georgia, it's not like that at all. You can buy Floridas, you can buy F1s, you can buy Northerns, you can buy whatever you want. You ain't bringing them here.
Okay.
Right? And I, mad respect, shout out to Florida. Good for them. That's exactly the way it should be. So, because I'm in Georgia, like right now in the example pond at Sugar Hill, I've got Floridas and Northerns in the same pond, separated, tagged, and growing those fish in the same pond to prove to guys how misinformed you are about genetics. Because the Northern fish have outgrown the Floridas. They crushed them, pounds of growth a year more, like 1.4 pounds of growth a year more, right? So there's so much misinformation out there about genetics, just genetics alone. Like people think, oh, I'm trying to stock Florida bass and, oh, my pond's going to have trophy fish. No, it's not. As a matter of fact, I go ahead and tell you that Florida fish are timid, shy, hard to catch. And the minute you go pure Floridas in your pond, you're going to decrease your catch rates by probably at least 30%. Than if you just would have went with another fish, and there's like a F1. F1 especially, they're even more aggressive, probably even more than 30% decrease, because your catch rates are going to plummet with Floridas.
So, but they can coexist. Like you can have a mix of these in your ponds if you want to.
Well, that's kind of the goal for the pond right now. We've got Northerns and Floridas in there, so when those two cross, you get F1s. That's what an F1 is.
So they hybridize, basically.
I was trying to create a situation because normally when I stock F1s, like you get great growth, they grow real good, but their offspring no longer exhibit hybrid vigor.
Okay.
Right?
So you want an extra generation of this sort of
I'm trying to get generations of F1s born over time, and it's a hypothetical thing. I can't, but it's the first time in my career I've had that much control over the genetics. And generally, it's just throw F1s in and watch them grow like rockets. They'll be 8 pounds in 4 years. And, that's the show. Congratulations. And generally, that's enough. Like what I just described right there with F1s is exactly what every single major reservoir experienced whenever it was built. And everybody went and fished there and they caught great fish. And it doesn't even matter what it's fishing like now because it did it in 82.
Yep.
And okay, see how the patterns are the same.
So, but the thing that's interesting for anglers, a lot of times, I feel like I'm guilty of it. I will say genetics, and I will mean that specific fish. I will mean like I've been guilty of, I'm looking right up at like a 6.5 pound largemouth on the wall. And I have said time and time again, I feel guilty looking at that fish because I took it out of a body of water that I feel like I probably shouldn't have. And not that it was illegal or anything. I just wish that fish was still reproducing or whatever. And I say, I wish its genetics were still in that body of water and it was producing and how many different generations could it have. But does that side of genetics matter? A fish is a fish and it's just whatever?
No, we got to correct you, Andrew. Think about it the right way, man.
That's what I'm saying. I think I'm wrong, and I understand I'm wrong.
All right, so a female bass lays what, like 10,000 eggs per pound, right?
Yeah.
So like a decent female is laying 40, 50, 60,000 eggs. Right. And every one of those fish is born almost at the same time during the bass spawn. Right. And they all go out into the thing and they all basically start eating the zooplankton in each other to survival of the fittest. Right. To climb up on top of that mountain. Think about it this way. You got a kid. Right.
Yep.
You send him to kindergarten soon. Right.
Yep.
Only one kid comes back from kindergarten alive. Right?
Yeah, I guess
yours didn't come back.
That's how it works.
Have another one.
Yeah. Oh
right?
Man. Yeah. I guess that's a way to look at it.
Kindergarten works for bass. Right? So every single year of that 6, 7 years, 8 years that fish lived, he was the only fish that survived in his class.
So every fish is the alpha, basically.
Yes, that fish genetics spread all over that place, dude.
Huh.
There's
it's hard for me to get through my brain of saying I caught, if I caught 2 fish that day and I caught a 6.5 pounder and I caught a, skinny, gross 2.5 pounder, that it wouldn't be more beneficial to keep. It's just hard to get through your brain. It's like,
right.
that alpha fish, that it grew to be an alpha fish. It's smart. It had good tendencies. It's whatever. Shouldn't I want that fish's offspring versus the skinny, gross, nasty 2.5 pounders offspring?
Well, I would say that based on that example, if you're holding a nice 6.5 ounce fish that's 100% relative weight, it's a healthy weight at 6.5, and you also have a 2.5 pound fish the same day that's poor weight, I would attribute that probably maybe some handling stress or something affected that negatively on the 2 pounder, because I got a 6 pound fish right there kicking a nice weight up. I'm not really, now, if every single 2.5 pound fish that I ever catch in that lake looks like crap, that's a different data set, right?
Got it. Interesting. Yeah, all that stuff it's the fun stuff to try and knock down what you've thought for 10, 15, 20 years. Because I've probably said that 100 times. Be like, I wish that fish was still swimming around and reproducing because that fish was doing something right. So hopefully its offspring would do something right.
That fish was a lottery, grew. That fish was literally a Powerball winner to get that big in Ohio, right? Its genetics were spread for 6, 7, 8 seasons. Right, way more than probably any other fish. So no, I don't look at it that way at all. That fish dominated its environment in a way, in literally at Powerball numbers.
Yeah. And it's more and to your point, I think what you've basically said is like, it's more the fishery than the fish anyway.
Yeah, it's that balance. Do they have? I think about it like stairs. Like if you start going up a set of stairs, and if you're a 1-inch fish, a 2-inch fish, a 3-inch fish, each step you take, you need forage. So if you're going up a set of stairs and you get to like a place where there's no forage, it's just like having like a gap in the steps.
You're not going to make it any farther. Game's over. Yeah.
You can stay right here, right? You can eat what's right here. So that gap in the steps is a great visual because you can see those gaps in an electrofishing survey, and you can see them if you write it down in your catches. Like I'm not catching any bass in this lake 15 to 18 inches long. There's a gap. I haven't caught any bass in this gap in like 4 years, right? You just have to catch enough fish to see the pattern.
So if there is a gap, though, if there are 5 pound fish and there are 2 pound fish, obviously the environment was there to get some fish to 5 pounds. So what's the problem? What's the gap?
Okay, so the most common gaps that I'm going to see right now, based on 30 years of electrofishing, you're going to have a crowded bass population or a crowded predator population, which means you're probably going to have hand-sized crappie and 1 pound bass out your ears. That's going to create a gap in the bluegill from like 3 to 5 inches. You won't have any fish that size, bluegill wise, right? You'll have a boatload of 1 pound bass that'll all measure sub 90% relative weight. And then every once in a while, you'll have a fish that kicks out like 9 pounds, 8 pounds, something like that. It's a good, big, healthy fish. And that fish right there will trick you into thinking that that's a healthy pond. But all that fish did was get lucky and now grow up and start eating 1 pound bass. And that's its primary diet. Right?
It's literally the king or the queen of...
Yeah. Now,
I feel a little attacked because you're kind of describing the place that this fish came from a little bit. It's not quite that bad, but I mean, this fishery, I've fished it for 10 plus years probably. Like it does have a little bit of a gap. Like there are a ton of tiny to 1.25 pound fish, and then they pick up again like 3.5. Okay. Like there's not a lot of those 2, high 1s, high mid, low 2s. It's like you go there, you can have an awesome day. I mean, I've caught 20, 4 pound bags there before. Like you've had really good days, but then also you can go there and it's just a squeak fest. But over 10 years, I mean, I it would be staggering how few fish I've probably caught in that high 1s to high 2s slot limit.
Yeah, it's just showing explosive growth.
Yeah, that's all cool stuff to think about for sure, I guess. Maybe I feel a little bit less guilty about this fish on the wall, and that's nice. So a couple of things I want to ask you here too, and this is kind of more on the random side of things. We're getting a little bit away from ponds, but are there certain types of prey that a bass, like take all of the relative growth and the biomass and everything out of it, and just the bass itself, are there certain types of forage that bass prefers? Like, will you see bass gravitate, given the chance, will they go for shad more than gills because shad are a little bit less defensive maybe? Will they shy away from giant craws if they have more bait fish available to them? Like, on the bass side as a predator, do you think there's a preference at all?
I think from the stomach content analysis that I've done, well, Occam's razor comes to mind. The simplest possible solution is usually the correct one, right? What's the most abundant forage? Because the most abundant forage is important to understand. Because just intellectually or instinctively, a bass is going to know that I can't just swim like a tuna, right, all over this pond. I'm an ambush predator. I've got to ambush things, right? So its body is going to know to conserve energy, right?
Yep.
Its body's going to take advantage. Everything about it is going to take advantage of the most easiest thing for it to eat. It's going to set up on that. And I know this is true because I see it. Like, I'll get plateaus in fisheries. Like, I'll get guys that want to do all this stuff, but they're stacking everything. They stacked all the thread fins and all the bluegill in, and they didn't do it exactly right. And all the forage stacks up at that 3-inch size. And then that limits the top end the bass can grow, because they don't have large forage in their forage base.
So they're just keyed in on 3-inch things. Yeah.
So it takes a certain amount of energy for a bass to survive, for its heart to beat, for its metabolism to work, right? So we've got to add all that energy in there as a baseline. But then the amount of energy past that is our growth energy, right? But if they're only eating 3-inch meals and there's no 1-pound meals for them to eat, right? That energy is limited. They're expending energy to go out and hunt and come back to catch a 3-inch fish when they could have been going out to catch a 1-pound shad or something, right? That's important to understand.
Do you think there's an instance where if a pond or something has been so carefully managed and all these bass have to eat are bluegills, like in some of these places that you're making, right, where it's like I'm feeding the bluegills, there's only bluegills in there, bluegills and bass, all of these bass know how to eat and grow up eating our bluegills.
Yeah.
Is it still in a bass's DNA to hit things that they've never seen before, even when they get old and mature? Like, could you have a bass that's 7 years old that's never seen anything but bluegill, but then you throw a frog over that fish and it will go up and smash topwater, even though it's never naturally had to smash topwater in its life?
Yeah, they literally do. But I've never seen a pond that doesn't have a few frogs either. But
right. But you know what I mean? Just my brain is thinking, like, could there be a situation where a bass has grown up and does not know how to eat topwater?
Does a shad glide bait work in a bluegill pond?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It does.
So there's certain things ingrained in the DNA of that fish or in the brain.
They're going to smoke it. Yeah, they're going to rock it. And actually, I think, too, sometimes that is a benefit.
Something new.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something completely different, that it's like something completely different that's still presented to them in a way that's an easy meal. And they're like, yep, I'm going to actually go over and just absolutely annihilate this 7-inch glide bait that I've never seen in my entire life, in a color that I've never seen a fish in this pond ever, but it looks like something that
the pink one looks good.
Yeah. Womp.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got one final question for you. I've appreciated this. These are the most fun conversations to have. This is awesome. The number one question that I get when it comes to ponds, when people write into our mailbag and when they, see me or they ask something, it's, hey, I'm so-and-so, I live in a residential area or I do whatever. What should I look for in a pond? And I know we've hit a lot of things individually today on things that might make a difference, things that might not make a difference, things that might have been wives' tales back in the day that probably don't matter. If you're driving around and you're looking for a pond that is worth stopping and fishing at, what are you looking for? Obviously, we have no data about what is in this pond, or we don't have any sort of electrofishing, nothing. It's just eyeball test. Are there certain things that you look for in an eyeball test that say, yep, that's probably worth making a cast at?
Sure, yeah. It's funny we brought up frogs because they can tip you off real quick. A pond with no bass will have more frogs. Like, it's stupid. Stupid. Like, if anybody came to me, yeah, if you go to a pond and you're like, look at all these giant tadpoles and look at all these frogs, there's no bass in that pond.
Or at least none worth worrying about. Yeah.
No, there's none. Like, I'm telling you, like, if somebody comes to me one day and is like, Shan, what's your lure choice? Tadpole, big one, with the froggy legs that kick and the big round head. Give me that sucker. I wanted to run subsurface, and I wanted to have good kicky legs, and I wanted it to be about as big as my hand. Tadpoles get whacked.
Well, don't say that too loud, because someone's listening to this that's about to go make a tadpole lure, and you're not going to get any royalties from it.
I'm not getting any royalties.
ICAST 2025, the Shan Ogorman tadpole.
The tadpole all the way, because they get and they're 99% water. They have no nutrients value to the fish whatsoever, and they do not live. We
have a term for this on the show. A term for this on the show that people make fun of me for all the time is slurpable. They are very slurpable. Yeah. Bass love slurpable bait.
That is a tadpole. So use that to your advantage. And if you see it, like I said, if you go to the water and you're looking in the water, you're like, wow, there's a lot of tadpoles in here. There's no bass in that water. But aside from that, I pay attention to probably like schools of fish. Do I see massive numbers of one size of fish? Do I see a school of 31-pound bass in a 10-acre pond? That's giving me pretty significant information. Do I see a huge school of like 2 and 3 inch bluegill all following me like they want me to throw food to them, and there are just millions of them, right? That's giving me information.
Yeah.
Right?
When you step out on the dock of some little pond and you look down and all the gills are staring right up at you.
Or do I see various sizes of bluegill? Do I see some 2-inch but wait, there's a hand size, right? But then there's some smalls. So again, are there gaps? Am I seeing 1-inch, 2-inch, 3-inch, 4-inch, or not? Right? And just good polarized glasses. Pay attention to the edges. You start looking, start seeing those little fish moving around. You'll start noticing them, and just little subtle things like that. But it all goes back to, you're going to have to go listen to these podcasts, right? You're going to have to do some work on your own, right? And do some reading and put that work in. And I get so many guys, especially on Facebook, that come in and talk like, I've been doing this so long. You've been doing it wrong for a long time, Chief. You got to put some work in here. That's on you, not on me.
Yeah, everybody, and this is a good example too. You listen to me ask some of these questions, and it's like there is no right or wrong, like snap answer to a lot of this. A lot of this is on a spectrum. When you're talking about water clarity or depth or whatever, right? There was very rarely in today's episode where you would say, absolutely not, this is the answer. Like, it depends. And so this is where a lot of times people ask these questions and you just want this easy answer of, yes, I would look for a pond that is 100 meters across and has trees on the left side of it and has whatever. It's like, that's not how it works. It's not how bass fishing works. That's not how live animals, with a whole ecosystem under the water work. There's so many variables. And that's the hard part about answering such a vague question a lot of times, is that there are 30, 40, 50 different variables that could be happening in a pond at any given time. I mean, you want to take, then it's the day that you go there too. It's the cloud cover and the barometric pressure and the blah. I mean, it's everything, wind direction. There's all kinds of stuff that has to go into, are you going to have a good day at this pond or not? So unfortunately, there's no real easy answers to a lot of this. There's just how much information can you soak up and how much information can you put in your tool belt to, whip out whenever it makes sense and you're looking at something and you are walking around the pond. You say, oh, I'm looking down here and I'm seeing all kinds of different sizes of gills. That's probably good because that means there are predators in there taking care of certain sizes and it's not all 2-pound bluegills that have overgrown the predators. So that type of stuff, I think it's very important. Like you said, take your time, go back and listen to. There are 5 other episodes of you on this show that people can go back and listen to. I know you've done a bunch of other shows before. There's all kinds of information out there. We live in the best day and age for information for bass fishing that's probably ever existed. It's just a matter of whether people want to take the time to consume it or not.
Absolutely. I mean, you spoke on it earlier about reading the research projects. I used to have to sit down at the science library. There wasn't even an internet when I was in college. We just got computer labs back then. It was literally like, go read them. Yeah, I sat and read them. I've literally like this.
Now I can do it on my phone on my lunch break.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And that right to your point, now if you know where to look, all the information is right in your hand. And I think for me, a frustrating part of it is having been so many places and done this so many times, and then still going online tomorrow and answering the same misinformed thing. The misinformation is consistent, though, and that gives me hope, because if they can be misinformed all the same way, then once they learn the facts, we can fix it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
It's just been 30, 40 years of just wrong. Just half right.
And even regardless, I mean, whatever, if you want to listen to this and you don't want to believe 100% of everything that I say or you say or what you listen to, fine. But again, the more information you can soak up and you can make this informed decision for yourself, the better. I tell people all the time, like, don't just listen to my show. Go listen to every other show you can listen to, because there might be certain things you disagree with me on. That's fine. But you get to at least soak up all the information and decide for yourself what direction you want to go, versus only watching the I stocked 10,000 fish in my pond video and that's now your frame of reference forever. It's like, right. Take the time to seek out info, which is always a good thing. And speaking of info, if anybody's listening to this, if you want more information, one of the best follows on Instagram, on Facebook, YouTube is Shan. Go follow him on Instagram at aquatic_biologist. You can find him on Facebook too. He's got a YouTube channel. He's posting shorts, and he's got, when you watch his Instagram feed and he posts a picture, it might be a cool picture of a giant bass, but if you read under it, it will be worth your 30 to 60 seconds of reading that, because it's information packed. And that's what I've always appreciated about you. Shan, we appreciate you so much for stopping by today. Thank you so much for coming on the 6th time here on Tackle Talk.
Thanks again, my friend.
Okay, folks, that is our episode today. Thank you, Shan, again for your time and for dropping by and giving us some pond knowledge here today on the show. If you're not already following Shan on Instagram, I highly recommend you do so. He's a great follow with a ton of information and thought-provoking content over there on the Instagram side. That is at aquatic_biologist. You can also find him on Facebook and YouTube for more content from Shan as well. But as always, thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate you guys. Find us on the web, tackletalkpodcast.com. There you can submit a mailbag question for your chance to be heard on an upcoming episode. Go check out our YouTube channel. I actually just dropped a quick little video showing a homemade retractable transducer mount that I sort of jerry-rigged for my kayak that might give some of you out there some cool ideas on how to solve what I think is one of the most frustrating parts about running electronics on a kayak, and that is exposing the transducer enough to run down and side imaging well, but keeping it protected enough to not break it when you hit something. That video shows how I made something that I think is able to do both pretty well, so you might want to go check that out. That is now over on our YouTube channel. But other than that, find us on Instagram and Facebook at Tackle Talk Podcast, and we'll see you right back here next Tuesday for another brand new episode of Tackle Talk.
Thank you for listening to the Tackle Talk Podcast. Tackle Talk is produced by Andrew Hayes. Copyright 2019. For more, please Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.